Today, we're jumping right into a story that feels like it's straight out of science fiction, but it's happening right now. It's a story of hope being completely rewritten by biology. We're going to break down the work of health scientist Dr. Colette Rahman and explore a brand new therapy that could honestly change everything for people with Huntington's disease. So let's get right into it. Most huge breakthroughs don't start with a bang. They start with a whisper. A quiet result from a clinical trial that starts to get louder and louder until it's a roar that the whole medical community can hear. This phrase just perfectly captures that feeling, that moment when a tiny piece of data hints at a massive shift in the fight against a really devastating disease. And here it is. Here is the roar. A clinical trial for a new gene therapy seems to have slowed the progression of Huntington's disease by 75%. Let me say that again, 75% over 3 years for the people who got the treatment. I mean, just let that number sink in. This isn't just a small step forward. This is a gigantic leap that brings this incredible ray of hope to thousands of families. Okay, so to really understand why that 75% figure is so monumental, we need to talk about the disease itself. We need to understand the shadow it casts. What exactly is Huntington's, and why has it been so incredibly hard to treat for so long? So at its very core, Huntington's disease is something you inherit. It's a condition that just relentlessly attacks and breaks down the nerve cells, the neurons in your brain. And it's progressive, which means it gets worse over time, and it slowly chips away at a person's ability to move, to think, and even to feel. So how does this actually happen? Well, it all starts with a single faulty gene. The best way to think about it is like a genetic stutter. Inside the Huntington gene, there's a specific DNA sequence, CAG, that starts repeating itself way too many times, like over 35 or 40 times. This stutter is basically a broken instruction that tells your cells to make a toxic mutant protein. And this protein, this is the bad guy. It builds up in the brain and just causes catastrophic damage, especially in areas that control movement and thought. And the human cost of that damage is, well, it's immense. The symptoms usually show up in the prime of a person's life, between 30 and 50. We're talking about uncontrollable jerky movements, severe muscle contractions. But it's not just physical. The disease also attacks the mind, causing cognitive decline, memory loss, and it can trigger really profound psychiatric issues like depression and anxiety. Now, here's the part that is it's frankly terrifying. It's a genetic lottery. Because the gene is dominant, if your parent has Huntington's, you have a 50-50 chance of getting it. It is literally the flip of a coin, a single coin toss that decides the entire course of your life. And that is the heavy, heavy reality that thousands of families are living with every single day. But what if you could step in? What if you could interrupt that genetic chain reaction? What if you could actually rewrite the code? And this is where the story takes a turn, and we meet the star of the show, an experimental gene therapy called AMT-130. The mission for AMT-130 is nothing short of audacious. The idea is to create a one-time treatment that goes right to the source of the problem. The goal isn't just to treat the symptoms, it's to silence the faulty gene itself and stop, or maybe even reverse, the disease's progression for good. So how on earth does it work? Okay. Think of it like a microscopic special ops mission. Scientists take a harmless virus and use it as a delivery truck to carry this new therapeutic tool into the brain. Then, neurosurgeons carefully guide this delivery to the exact parts of the brain that are being damaged. Once it's there, the tool, which is an artificial microRNA, acts like a pair of molecular scissors. It finds that faulty message coming from the Huntington's gene and just silences it. It blocks the cell from ever making that toxic protein. It literally stops the problem at its source. It's a brilliant idea, right? But the real question is, does it actually work in people? Let's look at the evidence. This is where we get to see the powerful data and the incredible human stories that came out of the clinical trial. This first chart it's just stunning. It shows how the disease progressed over 3 years. Now, a higher score on this scale means the disease is getting worse. The control group, the ones showing the expected path of the disease, went up by about 1.5 points. But the group that got the high dose of AMT-130, their score only went up by 0.38. That is a massive, massive slowing of the disease. Okay, now this slide shows us what's happening on a biological level. Scientists measured something called neurofilament light, which is basically a marker for brain cell damage. The more you have, the more damage is going on.
In the control group, this marker went up by 20 to 30%. But in the group that got the treatment, it didn't just slow down, it went down by over 8%. This is powerful evidence that the therapy isn't just covering up symptoms, it actually seems to be reducing the active damage happening in the brain.
But, behind all these numbers and charts are real people, real families, and their reactions tell a story that data just can't. When you hear a family member say something like, "This is unbelievable, it's amazing," you start to feel the true emotional weight of what this means. That's the sound of hope coming back into a room.
And this is what that hope looks like in the real world. There was one patient, an IT expert, who had to give up his career because his symptoms had gotten so bad. But just 1 year after getting the AMT-130 treatment, he had improved so much that he was able to go back to work. I mean, think about that. That's not a statistic. That is a life being handed back to someone.
Now, as absolutely incredible as all this is, it's so important that we balance this profound hope with a healthy dose of reality. This is not a magic cure-all, and the road ahead still has some pretty significant challenges and risks that we have to talk about. So let's look at the trade-offs here. The rewards, as we've seen, are potentially life-changing, but the risks, they're serious. The treatment involves a 12 to 18-hour brain surgery. That alone comes with risks of bleeding and infection. And some of the trial participants actually developed brain inflammation. And the big one? We just don't know the long-term effects yet. It's a classic risk versus reward calculation, but the stakes just could not be higher.
And beyond the medical risks, there are these huge real-world hurdles. First, it has to get through rigorous approval from regulators, like the FDA. Gene therapies are also notoriously expensive, which brings up massive questions about cost and who can afford them. And you need highly specialized medical centers to even do this procedure. So the ultimate question becomes, how do we make sure that if this gets approved, everyone who needs it can actually get it? So where does all this leave us? Well, I think it leaves us on the edge of a brand new horizon, armed with something I like to call informed optimism. The hope is very real, and it's backed by some incredible evidence, but we have to remember the journey is far from over. What we can say for sure is this: science has just kicked open a door that for a very long time we thought was sealed shut. There is a new pathway for fighting Huntington's disease. The next great challenge isn't a scientific one, it's a human one. It's about navigating this new path carefully, ethically, and fairly to make sure its benefits can reach every single person standing in this disease's shadow. This breakthrough is truly the science of hope in action. It's a testament to decades of research and the absolute bravery of the patients who take part in these trials. And so the question it leaves us with is one for all of us to think about. Now that we have this incredible hope, what are we going to do to make sure it becomes a reality for everyone who needs it?